Today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sean Connelly. I'm the Chief of Staff to State Assemblymember Jessica Caloza, representing the 52nd District, a beautiful place in our state, and so lucky to be here with all of you today. Many of you, I'm sure, know the district very, very well. Um, I'm formerly the Chief of Staff to Assemblymember Freddie Rodriguez, who is Chair of the Emergency Management Committee here. So, I was honored to join Assemblymember Caloza's office a month and a half ago. But of course, our first week together was spent really dealing with the wildfire impact so close to her district and her home. The Eaton fire in Altadena is very close to the district. And of course, expect the district to be housing many of the people who are evacuated and will be evacuated as they rebuild that community for many years to come. So I know we will have a lot of conversations in the future, I'm sure, around the very specific issue. But of course, I welcome any of you to our office here in Sacramento or our district office on Sunset Boulevard in Echo Park. Appreciate all the work you do in our community, and thank you for the time to present briefly. I promise I will be brief. I know you've been shared the information in advance. The first bill is very near and dear to my heart. This is the Individual Assistance Act, providing individuals up to $1,500 of emergency cash after the declaration of a disaster. Part of the issue here that we have identified, and we learned this through, of course, so many tragic incidences that have happened in our state over the last several years, from wildfires, landslides to flooding. California is an all-hazard state, and we all certainly know that it is impacting our homes, our communities, our businesses. So the Assemblymember was very focused and ready to go on the first few days of the fire to really try and pitch a plan here that would allow for the state to be in allowing people or helping people with individual assistance to take care of their most immediate needs: housing, food, shelter, clothing, all of those necessities, medical care. $1,500 does not go very far in California. But here's part of the problem with federal disasters are federal thresholds. If there is not a threshold that is met for the federal government, there can be no assistance sometimes coming to a disaster, a place that has gone through a disaster. Obviously in Los Angeles, the cost of these fires, the impact, the number of homes, all of those thresholds were met. I'll just bring you back to an example from 3 years ago. We had massive winter storms. The Assembly Speaker's district in Pajaro experienced flooding. There was also flooding in the valley in Planada. Both of those communities were home to a lot of undocumented residents, and they were not meeting federal thresholds for the amount of damage or the number of homes damaged, which is 1,200 homes damaged or completely destroyed to trigger federal aid. So we were able to quickly send $1,500 checks to local residents to help them survive and make it through that incident, which they were incredibly grateful for. But I think we're realizing we need to be able to have a stand-up plan so that when this happens again, and we know that it will, that California is ready to respond and care for our residents. The second bill is also dealing with the new impacts that we're seeing with wildfires. Paradise is a tragic example, and the state learned a lot. But we are also noticing, wildfires are not just a couple homes or cabins up in the WUI. These are now in our cities and our towns. And Los Angeles is such a stark example of that. We're not just losing a couple of homes, we're losing whole businesses, whole nonprofits, stores, storefronts. I toured the Altadena disaster area with Assemblymember Caloza and members of the Assembly, and you just see that right up front in front of your face, how real this is. So the Assemblymember has introduced, along with the Small Business Development Councils, the Small Business Recovery Fund Act. This would be $100 million to provide grants that are matched grants from $2,500 up to $100,000 to businesses and nonprofits who may have been impacted. That money is meant to be doubled by the state, whether you're getting money from an insurance claim, from a local government, the federal government, another nonprofit, let's say, grants from somebody or somewhere. We're trying to double that money to help communities recover faster and nonprofits to be able to do the work that we know so many in our communities rely on, especially those who've been impacted by a disaster. It's really a lot of the nonprofits that show up to support their communities. A lot of the businesses, we saw firsthand creating hot foods for people, but they need places to go and places to continue to operate if they are in an evacuation zone, or of course, worst case, they lost their physical business. But this is not limited to a physical business space. This would help individuals who work out of their homes, who have home offices. So I think it's a really well-rounded policy that we are hoping the state can be better prepared for when the next disaster comes. You drive around a district like the 52nd, there's so many hilltops, so many homes on these hilltops without good access to cell phone connectivity, internet connectivity, and to be very honest with you, are not home hardened against wildfires. So we are scared that this is going to happen again. We want folks to get ready, but we also know the state needs to have a plan to step in and provide people and businesses the resources they need to continue to be successful in their communities. I will stop there and hope to answer any questions that anyone has.
All right. Again, please use the raise your hand feature if you have any questions on this particular bill or any of the two bills, 262 and 265, which are on pages 5 and 6 of your meeting packet. All right. We have, Madam Chair, you have 2 hands raised.
I think I see first on my screen, Richard. We'll go ahead and acknowledge your question first, and then we're coming for you afterwards, Greg.
Thank you. The only question I have is why isn't the state more aggressive about promoting or requiring home fire hardening? I know in the case of my home, I went around and put double window screen on all of my attic entries and crawl spaces because I found that blowing embers go directly right through the 1/4-inch screen that's typically on an attic space, and removed a pine tree on one side of my house. Am I mistaken? Is there some law about that, or is there some way of notifying homeowners?
Thanks, Richard. I think we get ready to start seeing some of those conversations from Sacramento. I'll be honest, Sacramento's head is still spinning around, wondering what the heck just happened. How could this happen? One of the things that I've talked to the assembly member about just along that lines is driving through the community, seeing those homes, and recognizing that these people have probably never been told, whether by a local, state, or county government, a nonprofit, or honestly, their own insurance company, that they may need to consider home hardening here. Whether you're clearing defensible space around your home, those were conversations that people in the WUI, the Woodland Urban Interface, know very, very well. California has done a lot to make sure that those people are either required to, a lot of counties will make requirements in particular neighborhoods and zones. The state is going through, and we are in a process of updating state fire maps, which includes zones highlighting to the degree of which residents need to harden their homes or do that clearing around it. So I would look for those maps here in about the next month. You're going to see, I'm sure you can probably find some news articles online talking about those maps, but CAL FIRE is going through, and it will heavily impact Los Angeles. There will be many places where this is new for people. They're about to wind up in these zones on these maps and have new requirements or at least recommendations on some of the things that they need to take to keep their homes safe in the event of another wildfire. Again, this is a wildfire-centric conversation, but that's certainly not exactly what these bills are designed for. These are designed to be an all-hazard approach to the incidents that are, your average Wednesday in California can mean record-breaking heat, snow, and rain somewhere. It's incredible. I hope that was a good answer for you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, you have a question?
I do. Sean, thank you very much for your presentation. I want to be clear. You're saying these are bills, they haven't been voted on. If they haven't been approved or voted on, when do you anticipate them to be voted on and enacted and take place and be available after the governor signs it?
Absolutely. Both of these bills have been referred to their first policy committee hearings. AB 262, the Individual Assistance Act, will be headed to the Emergency Management Committee, which in my prior life, I was more than honored to help stand up that committee here in the Assembly. And it really was for the sole purpose that we needed to be more conscious and have well-rounded conversations, coordinated conversations around our emergency response, preparedness, and recovery. And that's exactly where this conversation is going. The second bill, 265, is headed to our jobs committee. It's gone through a little bit of a name change here in the last session. So economic development, growth, and household impact, I believe, is the new name. That bill will be set there. I would look for those first hearings to be coming up in the next 30 days, within the next 30 days.
And then when would they be voted on?
They'll get votes in those committees, and then they'll need to work their way through the legislative process up here through probably another policy committee, a fiscal committee, and then floor votes. And then we'll repeat that on the Senate side. And then we will get these to the governor. And if any of you have met Assemblymember Caloza, you know how truly thoughtful, compelling, and strong she can be when she wants to get something done. So we've got a great author here who I think can make these changes happen. You know, on the first one I talked about, AB 262, I had a real world example of that bill being put in. This bill has been authored before. It wasn't signed into law because when we were working on it, the incident, the winter storms happened, and we were able to quickly take the bill and throw it into the state budget to get those people funds quicker. That is not setting up a permanent program, though, for everybody else who may need to be impacted. That was just a one-time offering. So that's what we're looking to do now, is to make sure that this is a permanent program stood up in the state government.
Yeah, but I think I'm still asking about a time frame. Do you think it's 3 months, 4 months, 6 months? Give us a time frame that you anticipate that they'll be signed and be able to be implemented, because if it's next year, it's not going to help these people.
No, you know, unfortunately, Greg, I definitely share that concern. Sacramento moves a lot slower than many of us would like. And I think we probably misled people, you know, showing up and having bill ideas, but none of these were added to the emergency extraordinary session that we were declared in up here. We did move through the budget funding. I would expect these bills, I mean, if it's going by our timeline, you know, these should be signed by the end of the year. Anything sooner than that, I would be hesitant to try and predict that. That's out of my control.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It just seems like it's a process preparing us for the future, because we've seen the work, we're in the throes of something. So it seems like this is focused on having something in place the next time, which this is California, anything could happen. Okay.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? How many minutes do we have? Oh, sorry, I just entered the meeting.
Okay, no worries. No worries. You have 3 to 4 minutes left in this segment. So if there are any other questions, please use the raise your hand feature. We'll probably have room for maybe 1 if it's very brief, maybe 2 if they're both brief in terms of questions. Going once, going twice. Madam Chair, I don't see any hands raised.
I don't either, so very thorough presentation. Thank you, Sean. That's a reflection on the information and the clarity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Rhodes. An honor to be here today. Appreciate all of your time and consideration.
Thank you. We'll see you in Sacramento.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you for having me today.